Hey, welcome to the show, Richard. Awesome, man. Thank you for joining me tonight on Auto Transport Intel. Richard, I know that, man, you are very visible and vocal on. You're on LinkedIn a lot, aren't you? Like daily.
Try to be.
Yeah. When you're what tell when first of all, you are the VP of Insurance at PFA Transportation Insurance and Surety Services, correct?
Correct.
All right. So, what are you talking about so often on LinkedIn? What's your business? What do you do? And what are you passionate about? What are you talking about?
If you check out my profiles, you'll see I'm an old truck insurance geek. That's just in my DNA. I'm that kid that was the illegal passenger. I was the kid that was driving trucks for farmers at 14. I always felt that I was going to be somehow in the transportation industry and ended up being an insurance guy, supporting my trucker buddies with their insurance coverage needs. That's where my career started. My passion has to do with a lot of safety issues and risk management. I personally have sleep apnea, so you'll see me post things out there about fatigue, about distracted driving, about sleep apnea. If you want to save your life, you'll take care of that snoring problem that you have. You'll see me talk a lot about insurance things and what's going on, and to help you realize that while you think you're being abused, there's just some really difficult challenges going on with the insurance world. And as we talked, and we'll hit in tonight, it's a pennies business, just like trucking is a pennies business. And so if you can gain an appreciation for the challenges that you both have and your similarities, I think you'll gain some perspective on how to work better together. But as you alluded to, I post a lot out there about education and training. I think we can all continue to get better. And that's why I'm here tonight is I learn from these kind of things, and whatever people want to contribute, I'm ready to hear more and learn more every day.
Teaching and learning is kind of contagious. Like especially when you're I think it's part of you can't help but do it. The more you learn, the more you share, and then the more of an expert and authority you are. Um, Tell us more about PFA Transportation Insurance and Surety Services, would you?
You bet. PFA has been long known as Pacific Financial Association, founded by a lady named Penny Larson. She's still alive, still a member of the board. Her son, Dan, is the CEO. They saw an opportunity, Penny saw an opportunity to help freight brokers with a specialty product in the surety space and establish the means by which that required filing for the freight broker could be handled with a trust fund. That has developed over the last 20 plus years. They've added a traditional bond product. In the past, a freight broker, from a regulatory standpoint, only needed to have that surety, that bond, that trust fund in place. So they were going to the traditional bond markets or specialty providers like Pacific Financial Association, or even their bank, and getting that trust fund posted. The ever-growing demand for insurance, the challenges upon them, the contractual requirements, but also the cases that were arising against freight brokers, led Dan Larson to realize that he was not living up to the entire needs of his customers. And they entered into the insurance space and were having some success there and wanted to get more depth deeply into it, get after it. And I'm an old insurance marketing guy, and they're surety specialists, and the two of us came together. And that's what we're doing today is we're rounding out that ever-growing challenge for them is to provide what they need, some specialty surety, handle those claims, know what's going on, and then help them with their insurance challenges.
You know, as you talk about the history of the company and how things evolve through time, when did Penny begin the company? Do you know?
Over 20 years ago.
Right,
Last year was the official marking of the 20th anniversary.
right, and that's the 20th.
You know,
And
yep.
and so after the foundation of the company, when was the next big change? Do you know?
I would I would say the last evolution of changes. Well, the change in the requirement in 2013, 10/1/2013 was when MAP 21 required the freight broker bond to increase from 10,000 to 75. that changed the marketplace to a certain extent. And then after that, I would say the last 5 years has continued to see even more evolution of the demands for insurance and to protect themselves. So there's MAP 21, as you said,
Yeah.
and that had a, and that's still not fully appreciated or fully enforced. There, as you alluded to in your opening, there are those who are convenience interlining, who are finding a substitute means to transport. And the confusing part is, as I used to say when I worked inside the insurance company, stand at the scene of the accident and start telling me the names and the DOT numbers and all the parties that can be seen on the trucks, on the trailers, on the shipping papers. And it can start to get pretty confusing at that scene, which means that the claims activity and the resolution of the claim is going to get challenging at that point also.
Yeah, MAP 21, it's cool when I was talking to you guys initially. Um I'll bet there's so much information that you could talk about in specific with the changes of MAP 21, but broadly it changed that initial from 10,000 to 75,000. Right, and that is specifically, I'm talking about the, fill in the blank for me if you would. For $75,000, what is that? If somebody out
Okay.
there has heard, well, I heard
Yep.
something changed from 10,000 to 75,000, that is
Yep.
what?
So that is the requirement for this. I call it the surety because it can be a traditional bond or it can be a trust fund.
Okay.
So our trucker buddies that are listening, they know that when they go into business, before their MC can go active, they got to have what's called the 91X filing. Their liability filing's got to be put up for them. So depending on their authority, dry goods would be like 750,000 as a minimum. These auto transporters are miscellaneous hazmat. They need $1 million 91X filing. In the freight broker side, the freight forwarder side, it's their 84 or 85, BMC 84 or 85 filing that goes up for them. That went from 10 to 75. That is a surety. That is a statement to the people that they're giving loads to that says, should I fail to pay the bills I owe you, there's money in a surety, that the government is required to be posted. And that's where claims are filed against those that don't pay the freight charges that are due. And so that was the one big increase. The other significant thing that happened is in the past, a dual registration could be done. You could be under the same MC, both a freight broker and a trucker. With this point forward, if you go into register, the government is supposed to be separating those and not putting them on the same MC. And so the insurance industry is also opposed to operating them in the same name. Right. So the good thing is now it's saying, go ahead and be Jay's Logistics LLC, but Jay's Trucking Company Inc., does have a different name. It's going to have a separation. And when Jay shows up and talks to me about moving my cars, I'm gonna have to know, does Jay mean he's going to broker it, or is Jay going to put it on his own assets, right, on his own trucks, his own wheels? So that's the other big distinguishing thing in MAP 21. If you show up and say, I'm putting it on my trucks, and you don't, then you broke the regulations.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. And that's what I wanted to talk about as you're talking about some of these delineations. I mean, it happens all the time. You're a carrier, you have a customer, and you're going to move a car. And you find out you can't get that on one of your trucks, or maybe you just didn't realize based on the pickup and delivery location, whatever the circumstance is, you are now going to broker that load. And even if you think you've already got or don't have anything in place to broker that load, it sounds like there's several possible pitfalls here. How is a carrier supposed to comply even if they are, they think they're doing the right thing. They've got the customer's car. They were gonna take it, but now they need to broker it out. Is there something they need to do to make sure that they're doing that properly, or are they just, is it too late?
Well, that's why as a small carrier, we advocate to go ahead and set that up front to know that's going to protect yourself. And so I was a truck insurance agent in Phoenix, Arizona, prior to going back to doing some more company work that prepared me for this role today. And I can remember a trucker of mine named Danny, and Danny had been running about 15 trucks. Times got hard. He sold all the trucks off to all of the drivers. So now everybody was an independent contractor. Danny was both an operator of a trucking company and a freight broker, so that he could get all of the freight through him. And then in their little community of 12, 15 trucks, he could distribute that off through the freight brokerage, right? So Danny was still kind of the central guy, but everybody had their own MCDOTs. Everybody was responsible for their own FMCSA regulatory requirements, that they needed to do personal drug testing and driver files and maintenance, but they were doing it themselves. They were no longer dependent on Danny as the fleet operator. They only looked to him as being the load provider. So that's a great way for you to be able to go out, talk to somebody about their freight in this avenue tonight. We're going to say car, and say, hey, I believe that I can move that car for you from here, Phoenix, Arizona to Vegas without a problem. And then all of a sudden you change your mind and you want that to go to Millinocket, Maine. And I'm like, well, that's going to be a problem. How about I find somebody else for you? How about I run that through my freight brokerage and I find somebody for you? That's where you have that flexibility. You're able to take care of your customer. So that's why it's a process. It's going to cost you a little more money, but you could set yourself up as that freight broker and probably increase your ability to talk to more people, because I don't have an enclosed trailer and you want enclosed. What am I going to do? I'm going to find you an enclosed trailer now through the brokerage.
Good, and that's a good example. And those kinds of things do happen. I mean, customer has a new preference, and it's going to change whether or not we can haul it. So to do that, let's say you're a carrier and you foresee where you're going to be brokering loads, which I think what's interesting, we're going to talk more about this tonight. Really, that's any expanding business carrier's future, is that you're going to be brokering loads. So what are the steps, as easy as possible, that a carrier needs to follow to make sure they're ready for that future? To file the BMC-84, 85?
Well, the first thing is you need to get back into the federal website. If you do this work yourself, if you set up your own MC, now it's another registration. You'll go back in and you'll go through the process to become a freight broker.
Okay, so you file your broker authority.
Yep. Okay. And I believe I've been watching your channel. Penny is an example of somebody that you can call up, right, and say, hey, how do I get this going here, right? And then they'll help get that paperwork going for you, processing it, doing your MCS 150, getting your BOC 3, all of that, just like was done in the trucking. It's real similar to what you're going to go through. But there's going to come this point in time where you had to buy your truck insurance. You're going to need to get your surety. You're going to have that trust fund or that bond, which is, again, a primary product that we provide. What is it? And what's a little different about that is that a bond, insurance is anticipating losses are going to happen. Bonds don't. And so your personal credit and your credit worthiness is being underwritten, because now you're like the steward of money, right? Because somebody just gave you $1,000 to move this car, and you're going to give, a percentage of that to somebody else, and you're only going to keep some of it. Well, we want to make sure you're going to pay your bills, right? We're going to look at who you are, and that's whether it's us or any bond underwriter, making sure that the character of that person isn't going to present a claim. Hopefully nobody on this knows what a bail bondsman does, but that's what a bond is there too, right? Hey, I'm going to show up in court. And those are other types of bonds. That's what this bond is saying. Hey, we're going to pay for the freight that's due in as far as the money's due to those truckers.
That's where, and I know you were talking about as far as from the business side, there is background information. It's like getting a credit line. There are just certain personal and business information that needs to go into it. Well, here's a question I had though. Let's say you have an MC number, you're a carrier, and you want to file for your broker authority. Is that a separate authority or an addendum to your current authority? How does that work? Do you know?
We're going to highly recommend that you do a completely different business entity. The government doesn't require it, but you heard me say earlier that you got a logistics LLC and a trucking Inc. It can be a trucking LLC. The point being, you that helps you to truly separate and run two different businesses. And so that makes it clear with your contracts, that makes it clear with your taxes, it makes it clear with your insurance companies. Because a trucking insurance company that sometimes sees this brokerage over here, they're afraid that a claim might jump out of this brokerage and come over onto their trucking policy.
Right.
And they don't want that to happen.
Right.
So without naming any names, there are certain insurance companies that when they find out that this freight broker is over here, if it's in a similar name and if there's not separation, I've seen them do what I'm promoting here. They're saying, get that brokerage off this MC if you want us to insure this trucking company. Go put it over here. Go truly separate it. The government does not require two different corporate names, and there are those that have a corporate company with two different DBA operating names. But I'm just telling you, this is what you're going to run into in the marketplace. And in some companies, insurance-wise, even when they find a common address and common phone numbers and common emails, that triggers their warning lights and sirens to go off, saying, "All right, you didn't disclose it." So, depending on how far the degrees of separation are, I'm warning people. It's the right thing to do to separate them, but yet disclose. I heard you say that earlier. Disclose what's really going on here, because there are lots of tools to find it out.
That makes me. So I think I might have asked this before. Then is that so? If you are a carrier and you're brokering loads and you haven't separated companies, you haven't filed for the surety bond, you're moving forward. Things are busy. Life is busy. When is it that you realize you have a problem? When a claim gets filed?
Everything's fine till somebody gets hurt, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's sometimes when the bell tolls, because you know what? I just couldn't move that car, and I gave it to my buddy, and he had it on his truck. But when the paperwork went to show up to my insurance company to pay for that cargo claim, somebody else's name was on that bill of lading, right?
Right.
Somebody else's vehicle was described in that paperwork. My insurance company looked at it and said, "That's not us." And unfortunately, I had trucker buddies back before the MAP 21 changes that had that happen to them. Not auto transporters, but I got 5 trucks in LA today, and I need 6. And I call up Jay and I say, "Hey Jay, you got an extra truck in LA?" "Yeah, I do." "Hey, go bump the dock over there, at XYZ, and bring that load back for me." And that load came back, and it was supposed to be frozen, and it wasn't when it got back to Phoenix. So it was off condition. So they turned it over to that buddy to give it to his insurance company. And that buddy's insurance company looked at the bill of lading, and guess what? His buddy's name wasn't on the bill of lading, right? It was my customer who was on that bill of lading, and his insurance company says we're not responsible. So now all of a sudden you got $60,000 worth of refrigerated freight that's off condition. You got a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, you do. Oh my goodness. So, and then I mean, that could lead to a lawsuit, right?
Yep. Cargo is sometimes easier. You know, the real bad part is when somebody's injured, and that's when it really gets even stickier.
Right.
Right.
Personal injury.
So like I said, everything's good till somebody gets hurt. But you know, that's the unfortunate part. Now, the regulations, to be honest with you, there's not enough enforcement officers to chase after this. But you broke a regulation, and people could narc you out, you know, for
I've heard of that too. Yeah,
yep.
Because some people are just, you know, a legitimate broker, right? That's had it with somebody who's maybe they're not only going around the law, but they're not doing it very fairly. Yeah, they could get reported.
Yep. And in the feds, like any enforcement, they have to chase after the worst of the worst, and that's what they're trying to do. Is they're trying to shut down those imminent hazards, is what they call them. You don't ever want your name tied to the words imminent hazard published by the federal government, you know, because that gives you a special notoriety, and they shut you down immediately. And but those are the kind of things that can build up. And then the other thing that is going on is that there are these communities, and they're not necessarily social network communities, but maybe they are. There are vendor services that feed information in about carriers that fail to deliver, freight brokers that fictitiously, you know, try to grab a load and double broker it. And inside those communities, there are kind of chat boxes. There's comments made about people. So just like there's the ripoff report, right, that's kind of out in the open internet, behind some of these vendor subscriber services are comments that are going on amongst association groups or customers of that same vendor. And all they're trying to do is protect each other.
Well, and that's where, in speaking with you, I learned, I mean, you know, there's a lot behind the scenes. There's a lot more than I did not realize there was that much.
Oz is behind the curtain, my friend.
Yeah. Oh, man. I mean, there is, if you want to call it due diligence, there's a lot of due diligence happening behind the scenes at your level of expertise in this industry. I want to ask this because I'm thinking there's a carrier thinking this. Okay, listen. If the law doesn't require me to have a carrier MC and a broker MC, and I can have just one MC, and I can have the BMC-84 or 85 so that I'm legally brokering, I'm also complying with MAP 21, and my insurance agency, for as much as they know and as much as much cargo insurance as we have, liability insurance, we pay a lot already, and we've got those forms filed, are we okay?
For the most part, yes. You're not breaking any laws, right?
Good.
And I can think of a very well-run trucker that does have both his freight brokerage and his trucking under the same name, right? And his insurance company is cool with it, and he operates them quite well. So yes, it happens out there, but how many people trying to evolve into that are gonna be able to do that today? So that's more of the those are the grandfather deals of years gone by, you know, and insurance companies accepted them in the past. But one of my former employers, for as big as they are in writing truck insurance, and this was when I worked for an insurance company, they're getting a little sheepish, and they're kind of tightening the box in around the freight broker side of their trucking companies. So they're starting to look at, well, how much trucking business do you do and how much freight brokerage do you do? And if this freight brokerage starts getting a little bit too big, well, then they don't like it anymore. And so they're starting to, you know, it's kind of a scale. How much am I willing to accept? of this secondary freight brokerage kind of stuff. And if all of a sudden, you're in the right place and time and bam, that freight brokerage takes off on you, you might have a problem with your truck insurance then. And you're gonna be dancing to a different tune trying to figure out how am I gonna fix this thing.
So that's really interesting. So what I visualized was almost like a bar chart where if you
Yep.
see a certain amount of brokerage happening, red alert, it's time to create the broker side of this business.
And
That's awesome.
well, there's so many challenges that are going on. Not to name any truckers, but there's a very large motor carrier based out of Phoenix whose name is kind of like going rapidly.
Okay. They get more. They have drivers, trailers. They're growing. You're saying,
their name. If I were to say their name, you would know it.
Okay, I'm with you. Going
they
rapidly.
They just had like $100 million settlement against them.
No, man.
Okay.
100.
Which is an adverse decision with their use of independent contractors. So companies like that, when they get hurt with that, have to decide, how many times can I afford to do that, right?
Wow. What was it based on, this lawsuit?
Well, today's world of using the independent contractor rather than an employee driver.
You're talking about that California case, right?
Misclassification. Mm-hmm. Yep. And so there are a lot of companies that were using employees and independent contractors, and this was one of those companies. And because of all the challenges with using independent contractors, and once again, everything's fine until somebody gets hurt. Now I want to be an employee and I want to get all these employee benefits. So sometimes the contractor really is the instigator to that challenge arising. And the point being, unless you operate solely with independent contractors or solely with employees, you stand this yin-yang challenge that you could be deemed misclassifying these people, even though you're trying to treat them as an independent contractor and push them away and contract with them the right way. So long story here, maybe I should just help these guys, suggest these guys, or just tell these guys, I'm not going to contract with you anymore unless you're registered as your own MC and I'll freight broker to you. That's called a settlement carrier model. And a lot of trucking companies have converted their use of independent contractors from being a revenue share independent contractor with the MC DOT of the trucking company on the side of the truck, and told them, you go get your own DOT MC, you come back to me and I'll broker you freight.
Well, you just made me think about carriers that want to lease on, right? That's pretty common.
So the reality is some trucking companies are looking at the FedEx model where they don't want you to be one truck Chuck showing up. They want you to be, 10 truck Charlie and be able to bring multiple drivers and pieces of equipment to the relationship. So, our love for the entrepreneurial independent contractor, the cowboy of the roadway is being challenged. It really is. And I don't ever want to see that go away. That's what separates, our nation in many ways. That's what our commerce is all about, is being able to start, this guy named Jerry Moyes that retired from Swift after running it for 50 years. Back in 1980, they had one truck. And when he got out, he had over 20,000 power units.
Wow.
That's entrepreneurial spirit.
Wow. Well, but it's interesting as you say that. I know that, and Ty and I talk about this, and I think it's going to come up in the next hour, is that in car hauling, we're seeing more individual owner-operators joining the industry. Almost like, chipping away from the top, and the base is growing.
Well, I what I believe in is that if, we all appreciate somebody whose character, who is trustworthy, right? Who we know we can depend on. And everybody says when Walmart comes to town, don't be afraid as being the retailer that you're going to get crushed. All right, what are you going to do that's going to separate you? Who can you serve, right? And if you're a good auto transporter and you only got one truck, great. Find your lane, find your place, but control your own destiny about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and be the best one truck chuck that's out there, and go after it.